Horror movie sequels have been a fact of Hollywood since horror movies were invented. One Frankenstein is great, so how about another? And horror films seem especially easy to greenlight sequels for. But even so, there have been a number of horror sequels that have never quite gotten off the drawing board. Here's why. 1978's Halloween was left wide open for a sequel, which came to be in Halloween 2. Then, with Michael Myers seemingly dead, the plan shifted away from the iconic serial killer and towards an anthology-style series of Halloween-related tales of terror, but it didn't last long. This went over very badly with Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which was brutally rejected by fans. Since then, the Halloween franchise dropped the anthology idea and has never strayed from Michael Myers and his trademark mask and knife. Another massive franchise almost took the same path. As reported in the book Crystal Lake Memories, the creators of Friday the 13th didn't see how there could be a sequel after Jason ambiguously drowned in the first movie.
Then he's still there.
A plan very similar to Halloween's was devised. Every year would get a different horror story, but ultimately the studio didn't want to mess with a winning formula, and they didn't need to make a flop like Season of the Witch to figure that out. Instead, that anthology idea was funneled into the syndicated Friday the 13th TV series, though, which had nothing to do with the original story and lasted 72 episodes. After directing Piranha, Joe Dante was offered the opportunity to make other angry ocean animal stories, Orca 2 and the hilariously named Jaws 3 People Zero. Orca is a fairly tasteless 1977 Jaws ripoff, produced by the infamous Dino De Laurentiis, who's generally known for much more successful movies like Flash Gordon and Dune. It's pretty obvious why a sequel never made it to the finish line. The original Orca wasn't that big of a success. In contrast, Jaws 3 People Zero was going to be a spoof. John Hughes and Todd Carroll got as far as writing the screenplay, which offered a movie within a movie parody of Hollywood, with a real shark attacking people while the film crew makes the next Jaws movie. As Dante recalls in the horror history Real Terror, the script was constantly being rewritten, and he and the studio couldn't agree on what direction they wanted the movie to go in. Eventually, Dante jumped off the sinking Jaws ship and went on to direct another indie horror hit, Howling. Anyone left on the film ultimately decided the industry satirizing film wasn't really in the spirit of Jaws and abandoned the project in favor of making the more conventional but still pretty weird Jaws 3D. Peter Jackson became an underground phenomenon with such films as the insane Muppet parody Meet the Feebles and the hilariously low-budget Bad Taste. As a strong buzz began to build around him, he was offered the chance to write and direct a Nightmare on Elm Street sequel to take place right after the fifth movie in the series. Jackson's take was going to be called The Dream Lover, and like Scream, it would have been a self-aware horror film. The concept was ambitious. The kids of Springwood would know the legend of Freddy but be utterly unafraid of him, diminishing his power. But Freddy was going to manage to kill someone in a dream again, bringing the fear back. At one point, a kid was going to have to go into the dream world to save his father, trapped in a coma by the fiendish Freddy. The studio made Freddy's Dead instead. But all was not lost. This script got Jackson's name in the door at New Line, which eventually resulted in Lord of the Rings. One of the things that makes the original Last House on the Left a powerful film is the context of when it was made. Even today, viewers can feel the anger, horror, and disillusionment that came with the end of the 60s in every frame. Horrors of the time, like the Manson killing, seeped into the film and remain as present within it as the day it debuted. So it's hard to imagine there being a sequel. The gang of scum that assault and murder two hitchhiking girls are all killed off at the end of the movie, but wherever there's potentially more money to be made, producers will still keep trying. At one point, director Wes Craven was considering having two of the killers come back from hell to kill again, but that idea was nixed. Another script was supposedly written, but halted by a tiny oversight. The producers didn't secure the rights to make a sequel in the first place. That was that. There are many horror characters fans would love to see duel to the death. A Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash movie in this mold would be utterly irresistible. Fans saw Freddy and Jason duke it out after all, so adding in a blood-soaked Ash Williams complete with chainsaw would really make for a wild time. This prospect was seriously considered at some point, but sadly it did not come to pass. Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash was going to be the sequel to Freddy vs. Jason, but it never got out of the development phase. Why, you ask? Well, it turns out Bruce Campbell didn't want it to happen, and the main reason was creative differences. As he recalled in a Reddit AMA, "We couldn't control any other character other than Ash. That felt like a creatively bankrupt way to go. Not to mention, you're splitting the proceeds 3 ways with partners you might not want." The project didn't totally die, at least. It was eventually turned into a comic book miniseries. A sequel that would have featured Hellraiser's Hell Priest, aka Pinhead, was also stopped in its tracks. And speaking of Pinhead, it's been a long time since there was a new Hellraiser movie on the big screen, but there have been a total of 10 different films in the franchise. It's just that most of them went straight to DVD. One of the earlier attempts to bring the Hellraiser gang back to Hollywood was a potential sequel called Hellraiser 5 Hellfire. A different sequel involving a matchup between Pinhead and Michael Myers was also considered. Neither prospect has come to pass. Hellfire didn't take off because the screenplay was too big and too expensive, with the film culminating in a massive puzzle box sealing around all of London and attempting to bring the hell god Leviathan to Earth. Demand for a new Hellraiser simply wasn't big enough to get Hollywood on board. Creative Clive Barker was booted off the project. Subsequent sequels were released only on home video, and the actual fifth Hellraiser movie, Inferno, was a strange psychological murder mystery with barely any Pinhead.
Welcome to hell.
Bubba Ho-Tep was written and directed by Don Coscarelli, who also created the legendary Phantasm series and the sword and sorcery classic The Beastmaster. Bubba Ho-Tep, being a horror comedy, is quite a bit different from those films, but very much beloved in its own right. Fans have been clamoring for a sequel for years, and they came close to getting one. The title was going to be Bubba Nosferatu, Curse of the She-Vampires. Yet it didn't come to pass because Bruce Campbell simply didn't want to reprise his role. As Campbell told Entertainment Weekly, I killed it for me. I told the creators that I didn't want to dance around it anymore. I feel that the first one was a nice little gem and you don't have to make a sequel for everything. Go make it, get somebody else. I don't want to do it, so that one I'm just going to let go. Campbell did drop an interesting bombshell in that interview. Ron Perlman apparently almost took over the role. Most fans would agree he would indeed make a fine replacement. Amazingly, Paul Giamatti has also been attached to this possible sequel. With that sort of talent on board, She-Vampires could more than live up to its predecessor. With so many classic horror films being remade and rebooted, it's hard for a fan not to wonder why this hasn't happened with Phantasm. It's simple. Director Don Coscarelli is in control of the rights and he won't allow it to be remade. Speaking to the authors of Real Terror, he confirmed, "Out of respect to the fans, it's off the table. I get a phone call every week, it seems, from somebody who wants to do it. It's something I've been resisting for a while." While the movie could still be sequelized, another major obstacle exists. Angus Scrimm, who played the movie's villainous tall man, passed away in 2016. While some Hollywood producer or another may try to make another Phantasm with a new tall man, it's hard to imagine the franchise without Scrimm. David Fincher, a famously exacting director, has been attached to a whole lot of projects that have never come to pass, and one of them was the sequel to World War Z. While the production of World War Z was a troubled mess, it was a hit, making $540 million worldwide. Fincher had a strong working relationship with Brad Pitt, the pair having previously worked together on Seven, Fight Club, and The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. With the first film a success, a sequel was greenlit, but this prospective follow-up finally got canceled in early 2019 over budget concerns after months of pre-production. The studio wanted to make the sequel for less than the original movie's cost, which Fincher held firm against. As Pitt told Collider, "We had a really good story which Fincher shepherded, really strong story. The things he had planned for it just haven't been seen yet." For fans who were sick and tired of horror remakes, Cabin in the Woods was a breath of fresh air. A bona fide original horror film, it's scary, exhilarating, clever, and outright hilarious. Unsurprisingly, it has a strong fan base who have been clamoring for a sequel for years.
Gotta keep the customer satisfied.
Though the movie wasn't a blockbuster smash, there won't be a Cabin sequel, despite some initial brainstorming between the movie's creators Joss Whedon and Drew Goddard. As Goddard stated to Cinema Blend in 2018, "We had some crazy ideas, but Joss and I both felt strongly that we didn't want to do it just to do it. I'm very lucky that I get to keep making movies. I don't need to just go make a sequel for the sake of making a sequel. The only way we could do it is if we could do it justice, and the truth is, it's a hard one to do justice to." So maybe Leprechaun isn't up there with any truly classic horror movies, but the film has its fans, earning it a number of sequels, sending the diminutive demon to space and the Hood, not once, but twice.
What gang you belong to, the Shrimps?
Even though the 8-film franchise seems like it could go just about anywhere, there are at least 7 Leprechaun sequels that never saw the light of day at all. Some of these never-made films allegedly included Candyman vs. Leprechaun and a Leprechaun set during the Gold Rush. Candyman vs. Leprechaun actually came especially close to getting made after the success of Freddy vs. Jason, but it was the Candyman himself, Tony Todd, who turned it down. He loved his character too much to make him battle a little green munchkin. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite tales of terror are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.